We previously talked about the law of sines, and that was really useful when we had like a side angle case or an angle side angle case. We even used it for the side angle, although that was the ambiguous case and it didn't always work. So those ones worked really well with the law of sines. Now, the law of cosines is going to work well when you have a side angle side, or if you have all three sides. So those ones you're going to be using the law of cosines. And if you don't remember these, that's fine. Basically what's going to happen is if you try to use the law of sines on one of the other two cases, it's not going to work. So you'll realize that you need to use the law of cosines anyway. And there's actually 3 versions of the law of cosines, but they all say pretty much the same thing. And depending on whether or not you have your notes in front of you is going to depend on how well you want to learn these. So if you have your notes in front of you, you can actually just write all 3 of these down. If you have your notes in front of you for all problems, it's nice to have them. If you actually are required to memorize the law of cosines, you have a closed note test or quiz. My recommendation is just to memorize one of the 3, and then you can switch around the letters if you want to. So that's a little easier if you do it that way. But I think in the case that you guys have, you're going to have your notes for everything. You're going to have these formulas written, so you can just write them all down and then use whatever formula works for you. And I do want you to note that in case you're not sure about the letters, this right here is a lowercase c, that's a side. This is an uppercase c, that's an angle. So just note that the ones with the cosines are angles. The ones that don't have a cosine with them are sides. And as with the law of sines, the C angle is opposite the C side, and so on. So let's do an example. So we have a triangle. It has a 60-degree angle, and we know 2 of the sides that are next to it. We know that one of them is 3 and one of them is 2. The other thing that we know is we know the law of cosines. This is a side angle side one. With side angle sides, you can try to use the law of sines, which is a lot easier to use. It will not work. You don't have any opposite sides and angle pairs, which you need to do the law of sines. So we do have to use the law of cosines. In this case, we're going to use the top one because we know the angle C. So the first thing that we're actually going to be able to find is that side C. So we get C squared is equal to 2 squared plus 3 squared minus 2 times 3 times cosine of 60 degrees. Go ahead, evaluate that on your own, please. And this one's nice. When I did it, I ended up getting C squared equals 7, which gives you C equals radical 7. If you have a calculator, you could have put also that C is equal to 2.646. By the way, you'll notice I put an approximately equal to because the decimal point is an approximation. The radical 7 is the exact value. So now we have another side. That's very helpful now. Now, to find the other 2 angles, you have 2 options. You can either use the law of cosines again, or you can now use the law of sines. I think that your book actually solves this problem by using the law of cosines again, but I actually recommend that you just use the law of sines now that you have a pair of a side angle pair that are opposite each other, because the law of sines is a lot less complicated. So now you can use the law of sines, and I'm going to get sine of 60 over radical 7 is going to be equal to sine of, let's see, this angle is A, this angle is B. I'm going to choose B first. It doesn't really matter if you choose A or B. When you do that, you end up getting sine of B is equal to 0.981. Luckily, that's inner domain, so that's a good sign. And if you do inverse sine of that, you end up getting that b is equal to 79.107-ish, and that's in degrees. So we now have that angle B. Again, you can use the law of cosines again. You can even use the law of sines again. Not recommended. We know that there's 180 degrees in the triangle, so rather than using either of the two laws, it's easier if you just remember that they all add up to 180. So I added together 79 and 60. I subtracted that from 180, and I got 40.893 degrees. And I now have all three sides. I have all three angles, so I'm done with that one. So my other example, it is a side. I have all three sides. I don't have any angles. I'm going to go ahead and draw a picture. Keep in mind that that like 6, for example, is going to be my longest side, so that's going to also have the biggest angle going along with it. My picture is not really perfectly to scale, but hopefully you get the idea. So this is going to be angle A. This is going to be angle B right here. I just realized I made a mistake. So now you're going to use the law of cosines. We have those three formulas. Use any of the three that works best for you. You're going to be finding one of the angles. I'm just going to use the top formula. The c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine of c. So we'll find the c angle first. Go ahead, try this on your own. And on these, believe it or not, the biggest mistake that people tend to make on this has nothing to do with the law of cosines, and it has everything to do with the order of operations. So be really careful. I think when confronted with triangles, a lot of people forget the rules that they learned a long time ago. So you should get cosine of c equals negative 11/24, and you're going to use inverse cosine, and hopefully you get that c is equal to 117.28 degrees. You'll notice that's a pretty big angle, but it makes sense because it's opposite of one of the biggest side, a pretty big side, so that's totally fine. Once you have that, my recommendation, again, is to then find one of the other two angles using the law of sines. So my first step on this one is to use the law of cosines. The second step is to use the law of sines to find an additional angle. It doesn't matter to me which one you use. First of all, I'm going to start with the sine of the c, 117.28 over 6, is equal to sine of either one. You can do A or B. I'm going to just do B. That's going to be over 3. Go ahead, pause the video, solve it on your own.